a situation that is all new for our board here, and we will proceed with this and get Mr. Wechtel in place and continue with our meeting at 7 o'clock. After the proceedings that take place now, we will adjourn and we will start our regular meeting at 7. So that is how this will take place. At this time, I will ask the board to confirm the recommendation of Mr. Matt Wechtel to this board by raising your right hand. And in doing so, this places Mr. Wechtel with the approval of the board on the board.
Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, we will adjourn, and or do we need to have the swearing in before we adjourn?
I don't think so. I think it's at your pleasure. You can adjourn, and then Madam Darlyne will not have to be required to keep any minutes after the adjournment, and then we can proceed with the swearing in.
Okay. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So
Do I hear a second? All in favor of adjourn, raise your right hand. We are adjourned. Now we will proceed with the swearing in. Now, stand up.
Sure, you would like to be. And would you like to repeat after me, or would you like me just to state it in a paragraph form and ask you if you do and let me say I do?
that'd be all right.
All right.
If it was good enough for my wife, I guess it'll be good enough for her.
If you would, that's very good. Your daughter will hold the Bible made in 11 form. That's good. If you place your right hand on the Bible and raise your left hand on the Bible and raise your right. And I will ask you to now take the oath of office. Do you, Matthew T. Wechtel, solemnly swear that you will support and maintain the Constitution and laws of the United States and Constitution and laws of North Carolina? I believe there's a word like that. I think it should say actually. Okay, right. Just the B is in. Let's start over. We can just leave out that word. Do you, Matthew T. Wechtel, solemnly swear that you will support and maintain the Constitution and laws of the United States and Constitution and laws of North Carolina, not inconsistent therewith, and that you will faithfully discharge the duties of your office as Commissioner, so help you God?
I do.
Do you, Matthew T. Wechtel, swear that you will well and truthfully execute the duties of the office of Commissioner according to the best of your skill and ability, according to law, so help you God?
I do.
Congratulations, Mr. Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Baker.
We have about 22 minutes, and if someone wants to sign up for public comment, we have a sheet down here for public comment. Yeah, that's okay. That's okay. Gives everybody a little time to take a break. Oh, yeah. Oh, thank you. Is that, that's in your section for us? Do we need to, excuse me?
11D.
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 I need to
Um,
put that. 'Cause
Do we, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
11D, we will add that. That would be board appointment.
Lawson is, he was the communications person, I think, coming down. He's now up in the yeah. So that's, he's been doing extra conflict. And the other copy will stay on file.
And I'll accept
This
that.
was the other.
That is all we do. We know that.
Well, good luck.
Thank you.
I think I'm gonna stand straight.
Yeah, everybody can take a break,
Lefty night.
stretch a little, till we get started, so we can. And man, if you need to adjust that microphone, get closer, whatever.
It's loud enough usually. Most people don't need one that's smaller and go race car. 30 years.
Yeah, but these mics are tied into the house, and just turn them on. They're the same ones we use, the legal in the voters.
No problem. Yeah, man.
Man, we having meetings up here seems to be working out real well.
Yeah.
As you
I've
said,
got I'm working out of it. I've already got my notes and everything in it, so I'll just let you keep that. How do you think I thank you? Yes, sir.
we will eventually go back to the construction. Oh, no. We hope
What's up, Jack?
I am.
Why didn't you go out
You a
west?
Tar Heel fan? Are you a Tar Heel fan?
Happened, buddy.
How you doing?
All right, how are you?
Congratulations.
We do proceed, of course.
Pardon me?
We move.
Yeah. Congratulations, man. Thanks for taking care of yourself.
Well, I'm not saying it's not going to change anything as far as.
But tell them it's over.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Yeah. You go to the internet, everything we do.
Yeah.
All the way to the rest of these.
Born in C-SPAN, I bet.
Yeah.
But that'd be good.
Yeah, look at here.
How you doing, brother?
Starting to get recognized.
Oh, really?
That would be
6:30.
I mean, I'm not mistaken. I ain't seen it with open.
We're not there. Nothing's not that.
All day.
And the fourth one is house right in that area. These were neighbors, and he was telling me probably 10 years ago.
Oh, they did.
Oh, you been there?
We're all related.
Hot dog.
Oh, you had to.
Did you hold it in front of your face?
How you doing, sir?
What are you doing there?
Hey, did you get that generator?
Yeah. Yeah.
Big cool.
Yeah. We just get better so we can have, and I'll be just calling y'all.
This way, next day.
I heard that. You're really trying. Trying to put it. Right back.
Does he take your bags?
Yeah, I run your
Calling someone's behavior or what? Penalty for being the new kid in class?
Y'all get along all right?
Yeah.
There's a little story.
You will get it in this time, Raleigh. Oh, I'm sorry. Was that yours that was here?
Yeah.
I gave it. I'm sorry. I thought you left it for me, and I already had one. So I gave it to Forrest.
Yeah.
It's good. At this time, I will now call this meeting to order. And before we start the meeting, I want to welcome our new commissioner, Matt Wechtel. And we're glad to have him here on the board with us. At this time, if everyone please stand, we will have our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And at this time, before we have a moment of silence, please remember all our law enforcement across the country. They're having a difficult time with some situations right now. We want to remember them. Thank you. Approval of the agenda. We have any additions or deletions to the agenda? As is, I have one. We want to have 11D, which will be an addition where will be the board appointments for 11D. Also, number 6, this will be presented to us by Mr. Tom Banks, so we will take that name off and put Mr. Tom Banks there for number 6. Any more additions or deletions?
I would like to add 10E. I'd like to have courthouse renovation update.
Any other additions or deletions to the agenda? I have one more addition. It will be 13A, which will come right after closed session, which will be discussion of internet access by county employees.
Mr. Chairman, we're dealing with just 2 microphones tonight, and it may work best just to pull it out of there and hold it when you're talking, or that may work better.
Can everyone hear me now? Okay. All right. Any more changes, additions, deletions to the agenda? Do I hear a motion to approve the agenda with the changes of 10E, 11D, 13A, and the change name on number 6?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, likewise. Motion passed. Approval of the agenda. Next item was the approval of the August 11th, 2015 and August 18th, 2015 minutes.
No.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I think we may need to make a correction in the last line on the 18th in Article 2. It says upon motion of Chairman Brigman, seconded by Gentry, the board voted 3-1 to approve Mr. Cody's recommendation of Daniel Allen as code enforcement officer. I believe it's standard procedure when we have a divided vote that the votes of each individual member are recorded as such. And it's not just a group line. And if I recall correctly, Commissioners Brigman, Briggs, and Gentry voted in the affirmative, and Commissioner Rice did not.
Okay. I'll mention this, and the clerk, she is aware of this, so she will make the changes in the minutes. Any more corrections or changes to the minutes from the August 11th or August 18th meeting?
One question I had was August 11, 15 minutes, Article 8, paragraph 4. The comment shared that archived minute books have been filed in the Register of Deeds office. Was there a date that we had on that? I thought we had mentioned it had been since 2005. Did I misunderstand that?
There were some date periods, yes, but I don't recall those immediately. That's a summary paragraph.
I think I went and looked at this book, actually, I think it was 2007 was the last entry.
So where does it stand today?
That is still the last entry in the book, correct?
The only book that we have in the finance office is the book that we're currently using. I don't remember what year it started in, but it's the current book. It's the only book we have out there.
Well, we had discussed the continuation of having our minutes installed in the book at the Register of Deeds. Not that it's registered at the Register of Deeds, but it is just kept there for public information. I feel like that would be a benefit in case we had a fire somewhere that is fireproof facility and it would be kept and would be available. So and I think the board discussed it, did we not?
We did.
And Darlene, I think if we could have that done in the future, that is that a big undertaking to have that done?
It's just that I'll have to go out there to put everything into the books.
But you can basically take a copy of what we have, our minutes.
No, you have to cut and paste.
Excuse me?
You have to cut and paste to get it into those books because those books are on. But I can do it. It's just not handy.
Okay. Is that something that the Register of Deeds could do?
No, I prefer to do it since it's my minutes.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
So Darlene, is it 2007 or 2005?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'm not sure what the book is. What it starts with. I'll have to look and see.
Okay. But there's no changes to what we have there, correct, Commissioner?
Well, I mean, I'm not sure. I'm not sure that represents what I thought it represented.
Well, it's just stating that there has been records filed in the Register of Deeds office. They're not filed as far as a legal document. They're just kept there for safekeeping.
But they're not in the Register of Deeds office, I guess.
That is correct.
But we're saying that they are.
Well, then do we need to scratch that shared that archive minutes books have been filed in the Register of Deeds office? Darlene, is that something that
I think it's just saying that you shared the information. The only book there is, this is all of these books that have been moved out there have all been copied. They're on shared files, plus we have them on backup.
Mhm.
All this, I think all we're saying here is that we just shared that information, that the books
Right.
had been filed.
shared information? So we need to insert the word information after the word shared, okay?
But I guess my question is deeper than that. If we go back to 2007, and we've done it that way up till 2007, and then at some point in 2007 we stopped doing it. Why did we stop doing it?
Because
Excuse me. Go ahead.
because some of the answers I got for that, it was stopped because it's not required to be kept there. It is a option that we have. It is required to be kept at the office, which would be the finance office or our clerk, and it is required to be accessible to the public, which it is. This would be just an addition to the requirements, and it would be more of a backup or a safekeeping for the records if we do that.
Well, I mean, we've been batting this around for a few months now, and I'd just like to tonight come to some conclusion on it as to what we're going to do and how we're going to do it going forward. And I don't mean to try to, create an issue with this, but
Well, we have
let's
our,
just be consistent about what we're going to do, and then it'll be very simple going forward. Let's know what the strike zone is, and Then we'll all play the same rules.
Well, 1 minute will hold several years, so
Okay.
that's why I could go back that far. 'Cause 1 minute was huge.
Okay. I think we discussed that previously and we agreed that to do that. And I think after several people researched it, myself including, that it wasn't something that was, had to be done. It's just something that we as the board would like to see done.
We were going to amend, excuse me, if we were going to amend these, it might seem to be appropriate in the minutes to amend that all books except the current one in use would seem to correct the minute there. And then I do agree that the bigger issue is actually something we need to discuss separate from the minutes, actually. Because here we're discussing actually the accuracy of the minutes.
That is correct, and we need to continue on with the approval of these minutes, and we did not add that to the agenda, which would be discussion of the minutes, so therefore, it's not on tonight's agenda. So we will need to put that on our next agenda at our next meeting. Okay?
And correct the minutes to indicate that everything has been done except the current book, which is in use.
Yes.
Would that be appropriate? It's just discussion. Okay. I would, so I'm fine with that.
But with the corrections of the minutes you have before you, we will insert the word information after the shared on that sentence right there. It will be shared information that archive minute books that have been filed at the Register of Deeds office, which is what we done. We shared the information.
With the exception of the one that is currently in use.
Yeah. And then on our next meeting, we will have on our agenda the recording of the minutes at the Register of Deeds, and then at that time we discuss it and vote. Okay. Any more corrections to the minutes of August 11th and August 18th? Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes of August 11th and August 18th with the change on the incision of the word information on that sentence as stated? Motion.
So moved.
Okay, do I hear a second?
So,
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, likewise.
Since I wasn't involved in the meeting, Mr. Chair, I'll withhold my vote.
Okay. Thank you. All right. At this time, Mr. Chris Deyton, if you will step up to the podium there, and we have a microphone there. You may turn it on and leave it laying there if you wish, if you can speak.
All right. How's that work?
Probably
Probably have to hold it up.
Can everybody hear me? How about now?
Yeah.
That working? All right. Thank you for having me here. Mr. Forrest Gilliam said you'd ask maybe come by and talk to everyone a little bit about salt brine that the DOT places, what it is, how it's used. Basically, salt brine is just a 23.3% salt water mixture. What we do is we take the salt like we put out on the roadways. We have a special plant it's placed in. It's mixed with water straight from the town of Marshall. We have a salimeter that measures the salt content of the water. And when it gets to 23.3%, that's when it's complete. And then we use that water to fill the large salt brine tanks that we hold. The reason we use 23.3%, that is the point where the water molecules will accept the most salt that will lower the freezing point of water. Anything more than that, it's kind of like with ice cream. You start mixing more salt in, and it changes it. And it actually, you have more salt molecules, and they start blending together instead of keeping the water from blending together. So actually, the freezing point starts rising. So that's all that the actual brine is just a saltwater solution from the salt supply we have on our yards. The reason it is placed, it is a pre-treatment of the roadways. It's used much more in some of the warmer climates down to Piedmont. They usually try to place it a day ahead of a storm coming in. The intent of it is to spray it down as a liquid. The liquid then evaporates and leaves just that salt on the roadway surface, basically impregnated into the asphalt or concrete, so that when it does start snowing, as soon as the snow hits, there's already salt there on the surface. And what that does is keeps it from bonding to the pavement. It gives, the folks with DOT a little more time to get out with their trucks to actually peel it off the roadway instead of it actually bonding with the pavement and before becoming hard, and the plows are not able to peel it off as easy. Here in Madison County, we don't use it as much. In fact, last year we only used it 3 times. The reason of that is it's usually very specific weather that we have to have in order to place it. One of the things is the snowstorm cannot start as a rainstorm prior. So what happens if it starts out as a rainstorm and turns to snow, the rain just washes the salt off the road. So it's pointless. So we don't put it out in those conditions. The other condition is if it's too cold. They don't recommend it to be placed usually below 20 degrees. So if it's below 20 degrees, they don't like to put it out. At 23.3%, it will actually keep water from freezing down to -6 degrees Fahrenheit. But if that mixture has been placed on the road and then it starts snowing, it dilutes it and makes it less, which raises the freezing point. So that's why they don't like really to place it below 20 degrees just for a safety factor. And the other thing we look at, especially here in the mountains where we get a lot more snow than we do down east, is we've usually been fighting a snowstorm every week or every other week when it gets in the dead of winter. There's already salt residue on the roadway. And so it defeats the purpose of trying to put residue on the roadway if it's already on the roadway. So that's one of the reasons we don't salt brine as much as they do in the Piedmont. Now, the Piedmont is very effective down there. When it snows, it's usually right around freezing. They don't get as cold as we do. And so they're able to place it. They have so many road miles, they can put that on the road, and it actually helps them a lot as far as giving them time to get out to all those roads with their limited manpower. And the other thing is a lot of times just that brine, if it's a light snow, will melt it without them having to actually be there. By the time the trucks will get there, that salt that's on the road has already melted that snow to fail. So it's very, very more efficient for them than it is us. There's just very few times that we find that it's going to be beneficial. One of the reasons DOT, and actually pretty much all of the DOTs in America, at least that get snow now, are using this is because of the cost savings. It's 5 cents a gallon to produce it. Basically 4 gallons or 40 gallons does 1 lane mile, so it costs us about $2 a lane mile to place that out. Versus putting salt, on average, it's about $10 a lane mile when we actually salt the roadway. So there's a very huge cost savings if we can get that right mix of weather that it will be effective. And besides that, it also adds that extra safety factor in there of having the road already pre-treated with it, and really makes drivers able to get around a whole lot easier. That's about all I had. Do you have any questions regarding salt brine or its usage?
The question I have, how many counties in western North Carolina have already approved that this not be put down on the road?
I think Madison or Mitchell County has passed a resolution, but it's a mandate through the state. We still put it down on all 100 counties in North Carolina.
Even though they have the resolution, they still put it on the road?
Yes, sir.
What, if any, study's been done to determine the safety factor of it on what it does to the cars as far as the equipment, as far as the brakes, the suspension, the frames, and that sort of thing? Has there been any study on that?
Well, it's the same thing as salt. It's the same as the salt we place on the roadways. In fact, it's a 23% solution of salt water versus the 100% salt that gets placed during the storm. So it's the same as that. So it would not be as corrosive as just the regular salt being placed on the roadway.
If a vehicle is behind the truck putting down the brine and it's in liquid form, before it dries to a salt solution, does that not affect it more than just the regular salt because it's in a liquid form and it goes into places that the salt would not?
Well, it'd be the same like when the snow melts, when you put the salt out and you drive over the melting snow with the salt in it. It's basically the same thing being thrown up on your car.
As far as the
Salt water
percentages go, as far as the salt percentage, is this not a bigger percentage of salt when it dries?
When it's first placed, there's probably more salts in the water solution. But we always usually have a shadow truck that follows behind the truck that places it. So basically our truck is the one that's behind it and giving it enough time to start drying. Because usually when it's placed, it doesn't take it long for the water to evaporate because it's really a very thin layer of water being sprayed out on the road. And they usually stay a couple 100 feet behind, have a big sign saying anti-icing operation, please do not pass, to try to keep people from getting right in the direct line of that.
Right. And just 3 times last year, was that used on I-26?
I-26, NC 213, and US 25/7. We only treat the major primary roads.
So not 19.
I don't think they did 19 last year, though.
So by using the brine, is there any more or less runoff? And what would the environmental impact be of the brine versus just standard rock salt?
Well, depending on the storm that comes in, it can actually be less. If it's a small storm, you're able to put the brine out and don't have to put any more salt on the roadway. You can actually reduce the total amount of salt used on the roadway. By it keeping the snow from bonding to the asphalt surface or concrete surface, it also reduces the amount of total salt we'd have to use to try to break that up. It's one of the hardest things. The reason they're doing on a lot of the higher traffic roads is because once traffic gets on the snow and starts packing it in, it's very hard for us to break that loose from the asphalt surface. That's what it does. There's all kinds of voids, no matter if it's asphalt or concrete, a lot of voids in that pavement that it gets pushed down into and you squeeze the snowball before and see how hard it becomes. It does the same thing in there, so it's very difficult for us to get it out. And there's also less voids in that frozen precipitation once it gets packed also for the salt to get into to start working. So that's why if it's down below, it should actually reduce the amount of total salt we've got to use.
What is the freezing point after this is put down and it turns dry and then it snows or whatever, sleets or whatever on top of it? What is the freezing point then of this?
It all depends on how much moisture is there, because it's all in the ratio of salt molecules versus water molecules. The higher the water molecules, basically the higher the melting point. The less salt or less water molecules versus salt molecules, the lower your melting or your freezing point. So it all depends on how much water actually falls on it.
So obviously, the more snow we have, the more it's diluted.
Right.
Obviously.
And one thing you mentioned about the Piedmont doesn't have the equipment we have here. So do you not think that if we utilized our equipment, which would be our road scrapers or scrape blades on the trucks or whatever, that is the reason that they use it more down there than we do, because they don't have that type of equipment as much as we do?
Well, they don't have as much equipment, and that's why it's such a more valuable tool for them to be able to get it out in front of it, which is a cost saving for any county that can get out in front of it if you have the right conditions. But they also utilize a lot of other equipment, other agencies in some of those counties too. Plus, they don't get the quantity of snow that we normally get.
Yeah, I understand. So what is your thought on this resolution for Mitchell County? Do you feel like something can be done, or do you feel like it's just a resolution just to be passing a resolution?
Something can be done as far as DOT regarding the
As
resolution?
far as cutting the amount of brine that is put on the county road?
Well, the brine is actually there's been a federal study on it for years. They've actually had it in the U.S. for, I want to say 30 years now. They've been using it, started in the New England states. It's actually been used in Europe for the past, I'll say 50 years. And they're big proponents of it, and they've seen the positive effects it's had both on their salt usage and on the safety of people by having it out there prior to an event. And so as far as where DOT looks at it, public safety is going to come first. If they think they can do something that's going to be in the public safety, that's what we're going to try to do on the roads, because that's our first priority. Make sure you can get from point A to point B in the safest manner. And of course, we want to work with every community and try to be sure that we're all being good neighbors and good partners on this. But our top priority is making sure that whatever we're doing out there on the roadways is the safest solution we can for the drivers.
Did we meet our allotment that the state allowed us for salt and sand last year, or was there, since we didn't have we just used it 3 times, do we still have money left over for that?
Well, there's not an allotment directly to each county for snow and ice.
Okay.
Basically, there is a part of the budget that's taken off the top for emergency response, which includes hurricanes and snow and ice response. And then it also helps cover maybe some of the small isolated events like we've had to use several times to get these haulers that the rain just sets and washes everything out. That's all out of an emergency fund. And it was depleted this year. Actually went into the red again this year because of the snow across the state as a whole. But all that comes out of the same pot of money, the salt brine. Well, it's the salt we buy to put on the road, and we just take it and put in there. So the cost is just basically that salt that we're putting in and the time to mix it and place it. So it's really a very insignificant cost to the total snow and ice removal cost that we've had in Kassie.
In your opinion, does salt sand mixture not as good as the brine mixture?
Well, it's got different, each one has a different place. The brine is a pre-treatment to put out before the storm ever comes to get in. The salt and sand is once we actually have the snow and ice on the ground. So it's all, it's like comparing apples to oranges on that one. One is to reduce the effects of the snow and ice that fell, and the other one is to get rid of the snow and ice that fell. So really, they're both effective in their own right.
So as far as the county road, and I know Interstate 26 being a federal highway, as far as a county road, how much did we put on our county roads last year?
As far as salt brine? Well, the only things we salt brine are the primary routes, US, interstate, and NC routes. So all we did last year was I-26, NC 213, and US 2570. We don't do secondary roads. There's just so many secondary roads. There's no way we could actually get out and apply it to everything. That's why it's usually held for the higher traffic roads.
If we did pass a resolution, would it decrease the amount that was put down, or would it continue as it is?
I don't know if it gets much lower than 3 times a year.
Well, but we can't predict the weather either. We could have 10 snows next year or 15. So I'm just curious. I've been contacted by a lot of citizens in the county on this, and a lot of concern about it, and that's why I have so many questions about it, because I've been approached with these questions from people, citizens here in the county. It does concern me because I feel like my personal take on it is that it does affect certain things on an automobile, where if you had a less mixture of salt and sand, that you may not have some of the problems you have. But I understand you're looking at it as a time and safety factor also. And I look at it as a safety factor because of what it may do to the automobile.
Right. But I don't think that would have as much really damage to inflict on your vehicle as just the regular salt when we're salting the roadways. So even when we do a salt sand mixture, we're shooting, depending on the coldness and how much snow we're getting, it's usually on average about 250 pounds per lane mile of salt. And if you're doing half salt, half sand, then you have to raise it, because it doesn't matter how much sand you put out, you still need 250 pounds per lane mile to really be effective. It's kind of that borderline of, you put more, it work better, but then you don't want to put too much when this works. So that's why we usually, depending on the event, it's about 250 pounds of salt per lane mile when distributed. So I don't know that the 40 gallons per lane mile 3 times a year would be as corrosive as the 250 pounds per lane mile 30 times a year.
Well, it's obvious we need to, what you have told us today is a totally different aspect and view from what I had. Well, we need to inform and educate our citizens in the county of what exactly this is and why we do the way we do with it. Because then that way it would answer some of the questions that we're faced with on why we don't pass this resolution like Mitchell County did. We've heard that and heard that. And I don't know, I'll ask our attorney, does Yancey County, did they pass the resolution also?
Yeah, so
They did not, okay. That's something that I would want the citizens in the county to be aware of, is this situation and why it is the way it is. And
That's why I was really excited
maybe our local paper could do an article on it.
this is a very interesting subject.
Yes, it is. It is a very interesting subject that concerns a lot of people here in the county. I have dealt with it on several different occasions, and I didn't have the answer. And that's why we wanted you to come and speak to us so we could get some answers, so we can educate the public on why we do what we do.
And that's why I was very excited when Forrest said, you know, he wanted me to come speak, because we get the same questions all the time, and we're trying to explain that it is just a saltwater solution. Most people think it's some kind of a special chemical that gets applied. It's just regular salt and water mixed together.
So the reason our brake lines and the undercarriage of our vehicles are worn out has nothing to do with what you guys are doing. It's what we're getting from the companies that build the vehicles.
Well, I'm sure salt has something to do with it also. You can look at our trucks, because they're in it more than anything.
That was my next question.
I mean, that's just salt. Salt's going to be corrosive.
Right.
Which usually about anything you do place on a roadway to reduce the melting point of water is going to be corrosive.
Right.
And that's why we have these guidelines we shoot for about how much salt per lane mile. That's why every year when we, before winter starts, we have we call it a dry run before winter. So we make sure everything's working, the spreaders are calibrated correctly. You know how every driver knows how to adjust them for what conditions you're going to be running into to make sure we are putting the proper amount out, not too much, not too little, which each event it can change and it's everyone's judgment. But we've got a lot of great guys that work here in the county that have a lot of experience in it and know when to put it out, and when to kind of hold back on things. See, I mean, they can just tell by pushing now by the feel what's breaking loose and doesn't really need to have anything, or they can feel on the blade that there's something a little harder. They're going to put a little extra out to try to get it to melt, so when they come back through, it'll push off.
Also, one thing that could possibly be a factor, several years ago in the 60s, they started doing undercarriage. They started giving you a coach or undercarriage and do that. They don't do that anymore. And that's probably why some of this is taking the turn it has, because you can't get the undercoating that you used to get from a dealer. They don't do that anymore. So that's probably one of the factors that the public needs to be educated on.
And I know when I've talked to people before about explaining about this, they've started questioning the quality of the parts that they've been putting on their vehicles now versus what they did a few years ago while they're still placed in. But I can't speak for that. That's what some folks.
Yeah. Well, I'm just sitting here trying to get some sort of justification on why it seems to be affecting cars more today than it did 10 years ago, as far as the salt on the road and that sort of thing.
And one thing, there's a lot more miles traveled today than there were a few years ago too. We get that in the traffic count.
Cars last a lot longer.
That's exactly right. Yeah. Any more questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris.
Appreciate you coming by.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Kassie Robbins. I think it's Kassie.
Sure.
Mr. Chairman, before Kassie begins, this is, I think you requested having some different departments come in on a rotating basis, so
Yes.
she's going to be starting us off.
I gave you guys some handouts. I'm Kassie Robinson, the director at the Child Support Office. I am here today to tell you a little bit about what our week looks like. We have 2 people in our office. Brittany Hamlin, who's been there, she was there a year in April. And I've been there for almost 10 years. As you can see on your handouts, I've highlighted for Madison County. We have incentive goals that we have to meet. The first section, the total collections. We are at, in June 2015, we were at 107.56% of our collection goals. That exceeds the federal timelines at 107%. The federal expectations are that 70% of cases be worked in a timely manner, and we are exceeding those in almost every area. The paternity establishment, the goals 100%, we're at 106.7. Cases under order, we had 663 open cases in June. The goal is 85.26%. We're at 95.48%.
I'm looking at these stats. We're among the very highest in the state. Am I correct on this?
Yes,
Congratulations. Well done.
thank you. In the past, to my knowledge, we have remained at least in the top 10 in the state, not necessarily in every category, but in the majority.
How is the dollar goal for total collections? Who determines that?
Well, it is determined by the per capita, how many people you have in the county. But the Department of Health and Human Services, I would think is the ones who would determine that. The child support vision is that children can depend on their parents and custodians for their financial needs, medical, emotional needs, so that they can be healthy and successful. We want to provide a family-centered child support service through mutual collaboration with families and partners, because we can't do this alone. You know, our sheriff's department, the clerk's office, and our judges, and you as our county commissioners, we thank you for supporting us and helping us meet our goals every day.
This is a nice little brochure that you gave us here that tells a lot about how it works, basically. Things sure have changed a lot over the years as far as how they can pay, and I guess I'm looking at this and realizing that it makes your job a little easier, I guess, when they can pay by certain other means.
Yes, it does.
Any more questions?
Just again, compliments to you and your coworker for apparently several years of hard work and dedicated effort that benefits the kids in the end. Thank you.
I have a question that's totally unrelated to the numbers, but based on what you do each and every day, do you feel safe where you're at?
There's only been the 10 years that I've been there, there's only been one time where I was, I guess I should say, one individual that scared me almost, but we've never had any kind of situation. I don't go into work afraid, no, but I mean, there could be problems arise very easily, but
Do
thankfully
you have
hasn't.
like a panic alarm or something in your office, or?
We're in the process of having that set up.
That's good.
These figures here, do they reflect any back child support that's due? Is that how
They're on
you're
the,
actually at, which row am I
on the
supposed to be
second
looking at?
page, there.
Okay, I see now.
Current
Reed.
support
Sorry.
and arrearages.
Okay.
There's also a section for the medical support. The children and or the custodians are on Medicaid. The Department of Social Services automatically does the child support referral and sends that down to us. The parents and the children may not necessarily want to pursue the child support on a monetary basis, but we still would pursue the medical support to recoup some of those monies.
All right.
And who is the consultant, Angela Craig? Who is that person?
She is just our area liaison. She comes usually once a month and meets. She just travels. I think she has 6 different counties that she does. It could be more than that.
She is basically a state employee.
She is.
Okay.
And she tries to meet with me about once a quarter and just go through these, and she's raving about, not, the numbers are obvious, but also just about the attitude in the office, the good attitude, positive attitude from Kassie and Brittany. And really, she sees a lot of different counties and has worked different regions over the years, and doesn't have any ties to Madison County, so she's not really biased. So.
That's great. Thank you. Appreciate you coming by. Tammy, Cody. I'm sorry. Did you have more information to give?
No. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I come before you tonight to help. I come before you tonight with the contract for our school nurses for the 15-16 school year. We have 4 school nurses. 3 of them are funded by the state. 1 is funded by the school system. Oversight for these positions is provided by the health department. The contract is in front of you, as well as the finances on the last page.
I have a question.
Sure.
I know the contract period runs August 1 through May 31st. What happens when the school year is extended because of weather or whatnot?
We may have to amend that.
Mr. Laws, have you had time to look over this?
This is actually a contract that we developed last year. There was not a contract in place, and if you'll recall last year, we sort of switched things around to where there would be 3 state-supported nurses through the state program and 1 school-funded nurse. And we developed this contract, and it was essentially the same as this contract, except the state mandated some changes in their state-supported program, I think effective March or April of this year. We incorporated those changes into this contract. I think there were there 2 changes in personnel or 3 changes from the nurses from last year?
There were 2.
There were 2 changes, so we changed the names. And then if you'll look at the last page, which contains the funding, there's a breakdown there of what the school will be paying for and what the monies we'll receive from the state. I believe that Miss Cody and Mr. Gilliam may have tried to negotiate a little bit with the school system on some of that, but we didn't get too far with it. So I have looked at this, and the requirements are consistent with what the state will require us to do to receive their money. And then basically, these are our employees, and we will manage them and we will control them. We'll simply receive money from the school system, from one of them, and then the school has to allow us into the schools to perform the duties that the school has under this contract. I think that the program went through last year without any incident.
That is correct. It has been working well.
Thank you.
In reading over the contract, Mr. Attorney, I noticed, I think it's just simply a misprint, but in page 7, section 6, subsection D, referring to prior to resignation, if not working the full school, I assume it's school year.
That would be the full school year. These are what is in there. We have incorporated everything that is in attachment A, scope of work. These are the state requirements in order for us to administer those monies. So we simply took what the state had sent to us that were mandated for us to spend the money and incorporated that into them. So I'll pass that along down the.
So the misprint was from Raleigh.
Yeah.
All right. Very good.
Any questions for Tammy on this? Any more questions? Do I hear a motion to approve the school nurse contract between the Health Department and the Board of Education?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
I have a motion, I have a second. All in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, like. Okay.
Thank you.
If it's not too late, may I ask one more question? It's not going to change my vote, but just for our own knowledge here, are all of our nurses nationally certified?
They are.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Tom Banks.
Good afternoon, Commissioner. Thank you for allowing me to come on behalf of Sheriff Harwood. I come before you today under the Securis phone service, which is our inmate phone service for the jail. We're currently getting right around 33% of that monies. And the monies I'm referring to is the monies that mom and dad puts on the phone on their account for them to purchase and make phone calls outside the facility so they get a hold of their family members. Before we use the contract, Sheriff Harwood has negotiated with a Securis company, which is going to bring in a couple of different features, and I'll tell you real briefly. One is an analysis of data information. One's going to be a locator. If somebody calls in with a cell phone, that we could go within a reasonable quarter mile to locate where that cell phone is at. Also, it's going to give us the ability that we're going to have a voice recognition. Once an inmate comes in, we're going to read a speech, if you will, just a paragraph into the phone service. So tomorrow, when you call me and you want to know about Tom Banks, how many phone calls he's made, I have the ability to go into that phone line, pull every phone call that he's made, along with the numbers, and we can transport that all the way into to Washington, D.C. As you well know, we house federal inmates, and we've had as many as 32. And these fellows and ladies are from all over the country, so we've had some pretty informational data recorded and taken and given to other agencies. So along the lines of the benefits to this program, we have gone from a 33% revenue base that comes back into the county of Madison to a 70% revenue base, along with a $20,000 sign-on bonus if we sign this contract. This contract will run for the term of the sheriff's being elected into office. Last month, our revenue base off the phone service for the month of July was $3,327. Based on that information, if we were to continue to stay where we're at, you're looking at losing right at $1,000 that we would not generate back into this county. Along with this information, every piece of equipment that we have in that jail that belongs to Securis, we have no dollars in. We have no tax dollars in that money or in any of the equipment, into the service, the maintenance of it. They provide all of that. So I come before you to sign the addendum so we can move forward and continue this phone contract.
the proposed amendment includes a one-time signing bonus of $20,000.
That is correct.
Is that already in the budget for that?
No, sir, that is not. This is a new contract because this is a service we've had. And as you all are well aware, the phone services, telephones are very lucrative and a very competitive business right now. Well, our sheriff has been very fortunate to play off that and use it to benefit to the citizens of this county.
So basically, it's going to take us 20 months in order to recoup our money?
There's no monies involved.
So the $20,000,
The money is going to be written.
Us.
It comes to us.
Yeah.
That's for us to go and use their service. We have no monies in anything.
okay. So the signing bonus of 20,000.
Yes, sir. That's merely that I come to you as a phone service being Securis. I go to this young man here for AT&T. That's what you're offering the citizens of this county to use your service versus what AT&T is not willing to offer us. Because we've gone through several entities to see who would offer us the best package. This is a several months program we've been working on to try to get the best bang for the buck for the citizens of the county.
I noticed the contract says it would end February 12th, 2020, or the date on which the current sheriff is no longer in office.
That is
Is that
correct.
for any reason whatsoever?
Say that again.
Does that, there's no qualifiers there. Does that mean that the sheriff is out of office for any reason whatsoever?
Correct. As long as he's up, the sheriff cannot sign a contract for any longer than his term.
Okay.
Once his term is up, that contract is no longer valid.
And what I wasn't clear on though is if we terminate the contract early, then we have to give a pro rata share of the signing
Correct.
bonus back.
That bonus has to go back based on the pro rata, how long we've been here.
If something happens to the sheriff
Yes, sir.
that is beyond anyone's control,
Correct.
do we still have to repay that pro rata
That would be
share of the
correct.
signing bonus?
Yes, sir.
So, okay. So it's not without some level.
Yes, sir.
If an inmate refuses to do the voice print, are they prohibited from using the phones?
That is correct.
And is this English only, or do we have
Spanish.
service
We
for
do.
Spanish, Russian?
Yes, sir. We currently at this time, just to kind of get you on where we're at a little bit, we have the ability, we have a kiosk through our Kimball's provider where we actually let you visit from home. You can go through and have a visit. If your laptop has a camera, you can visit from home. We'll get a percentage of money off that. They can get emails. They order their commissary. The jail is very technical, and we run it as a business. It's not going to make us a great deal of money, but we try our very best to make as much money back into this county as we can.
Does the recording of this, I'm assuming, this might be a better question for you. Does this pass the attorney-client privilege?
I can't answer that, Mr. Webb.
It does pass. The only thing that I have to take off is for the federal probation, for federal investigators. I have opted out their phone numbers. If any entity comes in and they want their number taken out, we can do that. We have that ability. So all your federal investigators that come in, if the inmate dials that number, it's not recorded. And there's 3 numbers.
And it's automatically done that way.
I've already had it set up. Yes, sir.
Mr. Boggs, have you had a chance to review this?
The sheriff contacted me last week and told me that there was an addendum that he was interested in, that he had negotiated, and that he was interested in executing and having you approve that as soon as possible. And I told him I was not aware. I have had no prior experience with Securis. I asked him to send me the addendum that he wished to sign, and he sent it to me immediately. And in looking at it, I saw that it was not a new contract. It is simply an addendum to an existing contract. And before I would give an opinion either to him or you, I would need to see the original contract. And he did. Once I looked at it and saw I needed to see that, I contacted him. I don't know whether it went to you or whether it went to someone else, but I did receive, I think earlier this morning, or maybe even from Ms. Rhinehart, I received the master contract, which is several pages long, and I have not had an opportunity to review that. So I would not be in a position to give you a legal opinion regarding the contract at this time, just simply because I received it this morning.
Mr. Banks, am I safe to assume that the sheriff's department has procedures in place to guard the information that's obtained?
Oh, yes, sir. There's nothing actually kept in-house.
Okay.
All the information, phone calls and all, are left in Texas.
So sort of like the NSA.
Correct.
Okay.
So how is this 20 grand treated? Does that come to the, Forrest, does that come to the general fund? Okay. And then if anything is due back at some point in the future, the county would be responsible for paying
That
that.
is correct, yes, sir.
Has this been tested through case law in any way that you're aware of?
Not that I'm aware of.
Mr. Attorney, do you feel that it would be best that we give you time to review that? Is this a time-sensitive thing, Mr.
It's
Banks?
not really, I wouldn't call it time sensitive, but for every day we go, it's just one less day we're going to draw that amount of money. Where we're at is we're about 6, maybe 8 months from our contract ending. So we've been negotiating this deal, knowing our contract's going to end. And I think it's in November, to be honest with you, when this contract actually does end. We're trying to get started and get ahead of the ballgame.
So if you're looking at November, I can very easily give you an answer by your next
Okay,
meeting.
what-
I don't know.
What I will do at this time, I will make a motion that we table this item until our next month's meeting and giving their attorney fair and ample time to review it and come back with us with his information.
Discussion on that real quick?
Yes.
Under the contract, the signing bonus says that on or about the first day of September 2015, we'll pay the signing bonus. Is that a standing offer?
It's something, if this goes to next month for say, then I don't see we have a problem starting it the following month. You just need to give Securis some timeline to get this in play, get it on the board, and then we'll move from that point forward.
And if you would double check on that,
Yes,
so
sir.
we know our figures are correct when we do.
Absolutely. I'll find out tomorrow and I'll get up with Ms. Rhinehart and I'll let her know. That's a phone call.
Okay. I have a motion to table this item to our
Second.
next meeting. I have a second. All in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, likewise.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Appreciate
Thank you.
that. Thank you. If you will, just explain to the sheriff why it was tabled.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Melanie Moore.
Good evening. The Madison County Public Libraries recommend Shauna Bryce for the Circulation and Technology Supports Assistant Permanent Part-Time position. 4 applicants applied for the position and 2 highly qualified applicants were interviewed. The interview team felt Shauna Bryce was the ideal candidate due to her educational and teaching background. In addition, she also stood out as a candidate due to her positive, outgoing personality and customer service experience. References in the background check were completed. We recommend her for.
Would you turn your microphone on, please?
About to start over. Hello.
There you go.
Yeah. You were talking so fast.
I can do that, I'm sorry.
Did everybody get that, or you want to say it again?
I can start
They
over.
didn't hear they didn't hear a word you said, man.
All right,
I
I'll
am so
try
sorry.
All right, round 2. So the library recommends the Shauna Bryce for the Circulation and Technology Support Assistant Permanent Part-Time position. 4 applicants applied for the position and 2 highly qualified applicants were interviewed. The interview team felt Shauna Bryce was the ideal candidate due to her educational and teaching background. In addition, she also stood out as the candidate due to her positive, outgoing personality and customer service experience. References and background check were completed. Everybody hear me? I'm sorry, do you have any questions?
Yes, I have a question. This was given to us in our books, but is there any questions that any of the commissioners have for her on this position? Questions, comments? This is in your budget for this, correct?
It is in my budget.
It's my opinion, she seems extremely overqualified and we're lucky to have her. So I'll make the motion that we hire this young lady.
Second. I have a motion for Miss Morgan's request, and I have a second. All in favor of the approval of Miss Morgan's recommendation of Shauna Bryce for the permanent part-time position, raise your right hand. All opposed, likewise.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, no.
Mr. Ryan Cody.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Board. Thank you for allowing me to be here. I have for you tonight a couple of items. First, I have before you some new economic development board bylaws and a list of economic development board members that we would propose to approve. Like, we can start with that. If you have any questions.
Mr. Laws, have you had a chance to overlook these bylaws and approval of them?
I've looked at them, and if I could ask Ryan a question, is this the initial adoption of the bylaws, or you're amending some existing bylaws?
This would be the initial adoption. We are currently creating a new economic development board.
I guess what I would ask, you may need somewhat of an amendment. These seem to follow exactly what the statute requires, except when you set up the initial set under Article 3, Section 1, members of the board. If you look at the second sentence, terms of the board shall be for 3 years, with 1/3 of the terms expiring each year. I think we're going to have to set up a graduated schedule of those so that you take off 1/3. If we've got 3-year terms with 1/3 expiring, then you're going to have all 3-year terms to start with, and you won't have a staggering. So we need to put some language in there to actually set up how they're going to be staggered to begin with. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So I think depending on whether you have 6 or 9, when we appoint the positions, you may want to appoint 1/3 for an initial 1-year term, another 1/3 for 2 years, and then the second appointment will be for the 3-year term for each one of them. That would be the only modification that I see needs to be made to the bylaws.
How would that affect Article 5, Section 1, the officers? Would that also affect that down there where it says terms of office? Officers shall be elected for a term of 1 year?
The officers are going to be completely separate, and what would happen is that the board would meet and select those officers in their annual meeting.
Okay.
Each year.
Just wanted to make sure there wasn't a conflict on that. Any questions for Ryan on this economic development bylaws?
I would move that we adopt those with the recommendations of our attorney.
I have a motion to approve the economic development bylaws with the changes which our attorney stated. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor of the approval of the economic development bylaws, raise your right hand. All opposed likewise? Okay.
Now, concerning the board members, Mr. Chairman, do you want me to go down each board member individually, or would you just prefer to look at that list? me to call out each name.
Give me just a second
You should have
to,
that in your copy.
I notice our bylaws limit us to 9, but there's a list of 10.
I wanted to get to that. So we, in the original discussion at the work session, there was a couple of additional names. One name, immediately off the bat, Mr. Rob Kraft has indicated that he would not be able to serve at this time. So he will strike his name off the list.
okay,
Out of the remaining names, AC Honeycutt, I'm waiting on a final decision from him. I've not got confirmation yet. And Mr. John Knoll, the contact information that I had was incorrect, and I was not able to get in contact with him. So I wouldn't be presenting those two names at this time. But the remaining members, we have reached out to them, and each one of them indicated that they would indeed serve if the Board of Commissioners chose to approve them.
Mr. Attorney, can we vote on these names, which we have 7, I think, at one time? Or is this something that we need to open the floor for nominations on?
You may want to discuss whether you want to appoint all of them at the same time and then set what each one's term is going to be. That would be my suggestion, unless you're wanting to take some action immediately. That way, for instance, as an example, you could say that the first 3 will serve a 1-year term. And then the next 3 could do the 2-year term. And the next 3-year term. So that way, when you get 9, you can just appoint each of those 9 at the same time, and you can specify their respective terms.
Do you not feel it would be best that we contact the people on the list to ask them how many years they may be willing to serve before
That's
we
an
do that?
excellent idea.
Yes.
So therefore, at this time, I will make a motion that we table this until our next meeting, right? And then if you will, just contact them. And in that time, you can get up with AC and John and find out what they're gonna do. Then find out, divide it up into the years that they're willing to serve. Okay. And at this time, I make a motion to table this until our next meeting. Do I hear a second?
So,
Have a motion second. All in favor, raise your right hand. Okay. Motion has been tabled.
If any of the other 2 that you haven't talked to already drop out, what's the proper protocol for us to add additional nominees? Do we need to set a protocol for that?
Well, we have let Ryan take that responsibility of finding the people to serve on the.
Just again, if any of you have any names that you would like for me to reach out to, just send me those names. And in the event somebody doesn't want to serve or somebody's appointment comes off, we can preface them with that. Feel free to give me any name you have.
Thank you.
The final item I have is I have a planning board vacancy. And this member would serve in the Marshville area, and I'd like to recommend Dana Stansbury to fill this position. Dana is currently Deputy Director of Mountain Sky Council. She's a native here, and I've asked her if she would be willing to do that, and she said she would.
All right. Any questions for Ryan Cody on this planning board member? Do I hear a motion to approve Dana Stansbury as a member of the planning board?
So,
Do I hear a second? So we have a motion second. All in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, like, thank you. Motion passed.
That's all I've got. Thank you very much.
thank
That is
you.
all you have? Thank you. Mr. Jim Huff, you are next. Excuse me.
Thanks, sir.
Good evening, Joe.
Good evening.
What I've got to talk to you tonight is about our recycling plan for electronics. We're gonna have to do some changing. And I think rather than just jumping in and starting to talk about dollars, I think maybe a good explanation of what's going on might be in order for Commissioner Wechtel and also the public to let everyone know what's everybody on the same page. Back in 2011, legislature passed a law that said that we could no longer throw away televisions, computers, and computer peripherals. And we started in July of that year with this recycling program. The recycling program at the time, and has continued to be until just recently, was that we collected recycled electronics at each one of the centers and at the landfill. And of course, when we collect them, it still requires that we go get them, which we put money into in order to do that, gasoline and labor, and bring them back, put them in the proper categories, pack them up, and prepare them, put them on shipment trailer to the recyclers that we were using. The way the law was set up was a little bit different than, for instance, tires. Tires were set up so that there's a dollar amount that you pay with each tire that you purchase, and that gives you an opportunity then to recycle those tires, and you do that, you get that money based on per capita. Same thing with white goods, so-called white goods, which are, refrigerator stoves, things like that. The same kind of situation. But electronics were different. The state negotiated with, perhaps forced would be a better word, the OEMs, original equipment manufacturers, and they were required to pay the state money in order to become certified in the state to sell their product in the state. So they were collecting money from the OEMs, and that money then was used to subsidize this recycling effort. So that's the way it was set up, and with that in mind, we were able to then collect the electronics at each one of our 10 centers and at the landfill. Like I said before, where the money went that we put into it was for fuel and labor to take care of it, and then we sent them off. The first couple of years, we didn't have anything in the shipping, we didn't have anything in a per pound cost of these electronics. About a little over a year ago, we had to change companies because we weren't getting a good response from the company that we're dealing with. And we went to a company called ERI, and the cost of doing business with them was just the shipping cost, which is like $458 per load. And that's the shipping. They contract with a completely different shipper. So we were doing very well with that. That was our electronics program at the time. We had applied for some grants and received some specially built trailers that we could put these on at our more high density usage convenience center. For instance, Marshall had trailers. It was a couple, 3 other centers that had trailers, and we had customers put the electronics on those trailers, and we brought them in that way. We did receive, the state did send us a little bit of money. We became qualified with the state. We had a plan, basically, that we described to the state of what we were doing. And they gave us a little bit of money on per capita, but that didn't ever amount to more than $1,500. So you can see very quickly that didn't last very long, paying for fuel, going to get these things. Okay, so that's where we were until late this spring. Late this spring, it was my understanding that perhaps county manager can enlighten us on the bill. But there was a very large bill put forth. In that bill was a recommendation, or at least something to eliminate the subsidies that the OEM paid. Okay, if you eliminate the subsidies that the OEM pays, then the companies that recycle these things start looking to you for money. Now that bill, as far as I know, hasn't passed yet. It's still up in the air. However, at the same time, the companies and I don't know this for sure, but it sure looks like it, got together and decided that this was a fine opportunity to start charging for electronics whether the bill passes or not. And so, and that's what they did, okay? Their claim is that the commodities market went down. Commodities being, well, why would a company be interested in electronics? Because in those electronics, they use gold-plated contacts, they use gold-plated this, gold-plated that, silver-plated, platinum-plated. So what they're doing is basically they're mining this for the precious metals. Those markets went way down. And so it was a fine opportunity to take advantage of being able to charge for it, and that's what they did. So at the same time, I'll just read you what was written on the Diener website. All vendors serving local governments have withdrawn from the state electronics recycling service contract 926C. And then it goes on to say that they're working on another, well, let me just read it. Division of Environmental Assistance and Customer Service is working to prepare a rebid the state convenience contract for local government electronics recycling. So there is no company right now that recycles these things that is participating in the state contract, and they had to be certified on the state contract to receive the subsidies that the companies were going to, that they were paying. So you can kind of see what has happened here. It has deteriorated. This whole electronics recycling issue has deteriorated down to the point where the companies are now looking for the customer to pay them to take the electronics, and that's where we find ourselves. Okay. All right, so a study from last year. Let's see if I can get it out. We had 8 loads of electronics last year. We would have had more than that. We had to hold on to a couple of loads when all this started happening to us in May. We had to start holding on to some loads. And by the way, we've got at least 2 loads of electronics, and that's all the room we have is 2 loads. We're tractor trailer loads. We have those down at the landfill right now. Hopefully we're going to get those 2 out of here without having to jump to the new paper pound. Okay. We've got a truck coming tomorrow and then another one coming on Friday. We're going to try to clean this out. We have no room for electronics. That's why we had to stop taking that to center. There is no room. As a matter of fact, a lot of these right now are sitting outside. And that's not a good thing. Okay, so last year we had 8 loads. Like I said, we probably would have had more if things had been like if it stayed like we were originally started. We recycled 152,470 some pounds of electronics. Could have been a little bit more. If you had to pay what electronics or ERI was talking about at 40 cents a pound, I think you have that in front of you. I've done a spreadsheet on that. You were looking at $56,543 for last year. If that number dropped down to 30 cents a pound, which is what I think it's going to end up being, it's 30 cents a pound. You're looking at $43,890 some. That money's not in the budget. The budget was set and completed before any of this started happening. So this is just not in the budget. 2 things are going to happen. Well, there's some options. A couple of them are not very good. One option is you just stop taking electronics, period. The law says we can't throw them away. It doesn't say we have to take them. That's not a good option. People are used to recycling their electronics and want to continue to use that service. Okay, that's option number 1. Option number 2 is to heat it, okay, which means go back, but we don't have that money in the budget. Option number 3 is to charge for electronics. That's what I would recommend, is that we start charging for electronics. Now, if we start charging for them, what do? We have a set of scales. You can't charge based on weight unless you have certified scales. And we don't have anything that weighs but plus or minus 20 pounds at the truck scale. So my recommendation would be a flat fee. When you see a piece of electronic come in, you make a decision what it is and you charge a flat fee. As you see there, I ran about 3 different scenarios of what we could do in order to cover with revenue off of these electronics, what it would cost us to actually recycle them if we end up continuing to get as many as we've been getting. Okay. Scenario number 2 is what I'm going to recommend, and I'm not going to go through each one of the scenarios because this is complicated enough without starting to get into a tremendous amount of numbers. Okay. Scenario 2, $20 for a very large TV, and I'm going to recommend that number is about a 24-inch TV and above. The average weight of a very large TV, 32 inches. And by the way, you know when you measure TVs, you do it diagonally. So a very large TV, like 32 inches and above, I'm talking about a CRT. I'm not talking about the flat screen. I'm talking about the CRTs. And just as an aside issue, that's pretty much what we're getting. We're still getting big CRT type TVs. We've been getting those for like 4 years running. At the same time that Deyton's been telling us that they're going to decrease, that number's going to decrease, and even some of the people that we deal with to send these electronics off to that said they've got to start decreasing. Well, that makes some sense because they stopped making that kind. And they're selling flat screens. You go down to any store and you're going to see flat screen TVs. But we haven't seen a drop off in these TVs, and we've been taking them now for 4 years. And I've heard, and even some of you have mentioned, well, we're getting them from Buncombe County. No, we're not. Because Buncombe County and Haywood County and Yancey County, Henderson County, Transylvania County, Macon County, all have the same problem. I don't know where these TVs are coming from. But they are coming.
What are the surrounding counties doing as far as how are they disposing of them?
They're up in the air right now, just like we are. I can tell you that several of the counties, and I have a list of them here, have been charging for electronics. Some of them haven't, some of them have. The ones that have been charging for electronics that I talked to, I have those numbers. However, they say, we're going to have to change that because it's not going to cover it. Okay. Numbers that were used were like $15 for a certain size TV, $10 for a certain size TV. But as I said, it's not going to cover the cost, not now. So that's what the other counties are doing. And I think that eventually the large CRT TVs will begin to drop off in the amount that we're getting. But I can't tell you when, because I would have expected it before now, and it hasn't happened. So when are we going to flush those out of the system? I don't know. But until then, we've got a lot of weight. I can tell you a large 32-inch TV and bigger, they average well over 110 pounds. They're huge. And I can also give you some numbers for other televisions. These numbers that I have put down here so that I can make a recommendation were based upon taking a look at what we have now, doing average weights on them. And that's a very hard thing to do, a very hard thing to do. And assigning the weights and the percentages of TVs and making a recommendation based upon that. I asked our recycler, give me an average weight of TV. He would not give it to us. And he handles them every day. But I can tell you that about 33% are very large TVs, 32 inches and above. About a third of them run in the 20s as far as size, and about a third of them run smaller than that. And and that includes the CRT, like computer monitors, CRT, it's the same thing. So the numbers that I've got in scenario number 2 there, which would be like $20 for a very large TV, and I'm going to talk about, let's say, 24, 25 inches and above. $20 for one of those, $15 for all other TVs and monitors, and $5 for other computer peripherals. That does not include computers. We actually get a nickel a pound for computers, but a nickel a pound just barely pays on every load, just barely pays for the transportation down there. We don't make much money on it. So we wouldn't charge for computers, but charge for computer peripherals, charge for the 2 sides of the TV. If you do that, and you take a look at the number I've added up, it's about 40,300. And if you look at the total per load over on the right-hand column of what it would cost us, we're looking at $43,000, $44,000. It's pretty close. And so that would be my recommendation is scenario number 2. Now, obviously, we cannot take money at the center. Just cannot do it. So that means that we would only take electronics at the landfill, or we could take the money. And that's where we're taking them now anyway. That's not why we stopped. We stopped because we didn't have any room anymore. We couldn't take any more at the center. We're fixing to get rid of those.
Just for clarification purposes, I know you've got your expense calculated as total per load. Under your 3 scenarios that you presented as examples, is that the per load revenue?
No, that would be total.
So that would be annual revenue?
That would be annual revenue, yes, sir. And that's an estimate.
I find it very sad and disturbing that we work so hard as commissioners to lower this disposal fee, the card that everyone pays for each year, and now we're hit with this. It's like 1 step forward, 2 steps back, because we were proud of what we've done with disposal to get that reduced. And looking at this, I see it as it's pretty tough. If you live way in a rural area, let's say, for instance, you live on Spillcorn and you've got to haul your TV all the way to the landfill to get rid of your TV. That would be aggravation. I mean, I'll be honest with you. As a citizen, I would find that.
That's why we were taking them at the centers with no charge in each one of the centers. That's the reason we set it up that way. And it was set up that way in 2011 for that very reason. We wanted to give everyone equal opportunity to the service without them having to pay an exorbitant amount based on where they live. But we can't take, obviously, we can't take money from the center. We don't have the security, we don't have the manpower set up to do that. And that would be a disaster.
Yeah, I think that would pose another problem and an issue that we would have a tough time with, because we have 8 centers.
Got 10.
10, I'm sorry, 10. And to set that up to take money, then.
You'd have to take, with it set up like it is, you'd have to bring that money out of there every day. You'd have to have 2 people at the heavy centers. You would have to have, you'd have to have someone take some cash to work with out there prior to. So you can see it snowballs and it gets unmanageable, is the way that comes out.
And those little shacks that are out there are less than secure.
They're not secure at all.
No. I would like to see us, I'm speaking from a perspective of looking at these scenarios you have, and you're talking about number 2, and you say that if these TVs change over a period of time, then we would do away with the $20 for very large TVs and go to $15 for all TVs, correct?
That's the implication, but we still have very large other type TVs. We'd have to take a look at those.
Yeah.
I mean, the flat
As far as
screen TVs you see
projection
now
TV.
are almost as big as the table you're sitting at, some of them. So we'd have to take a good look at that. The reason that we based it on what we did is because 80 to 90% of everything we get are large CRT TVs, or I'm sorry, not large, but CRT TVs. Okay? I mean, that's what surprised the state. Tell you the truth, it's an ill-conceived method of carrying it out. My personal opinion. That's my opinion. Okay. The state didn't know what they were fixing to get into, but they found out. The problem is the onus is on us to pay for it with this new bill.
So in your, looking at scenario 3, $15 for TVs and monitors, $5 for other computers, and then we have the money from the sale of computers, which is the same in all 3 scenarios. I feel like that would be the only fair way to do this. If you go to $20 for a very large TV, then you're going to have people argue about the size of their TV, and it's going to be an issue where if you have a straight across the board fee, it's the same. You know, you're looking at $15 on both scenarios, 2 and 3, for the TVs. So therefore, it's the same as both. And what you're doing, you're not charging $20 for a very large TV that we have to determine what is a very large TV.
We would actually have to measure them, and it would be much easier for us if we just had one flat rate for television. I don't have any problem with that. I'm just a little concerned that the number's $5,000 lower than what we'd actually have into it. Now, these are calculations based on what we did last year. They're calculations based upon what we feel is an average weight. We did that reasonably well. We went out and actually measured some weights of televisions and sizes of televisions, but they're still estimates. Okay. So are these hard numbers? They're very educated numbers, but not hard. Okay.
Well, I would want to look at, my choice personally is scenario number 3, which is a flat rate for TVs, $5 for computers and everything. But then, on the other hand, I would want to look at the possibility, this is the possibility, of having a county vehicle a certain day of the month be at the disposal sites, the sites where we disposal, to pick up the TVs. And then that person would be in charge. You'd have 2 people to assist in loading and unloading. You're going to have 2 people. They will take the money. Then they'll bring it straight to the landfill and give it to you. And you will inventory the TVs to make sure, number 1, that the monies and the TVs are correct. That would help the taxpayers from having to go all the way to the dump. They could say, okay, on March the 15th, on this date, I know they're going to be down here. I can take my TV down here.
That's a reasonable idea. I don't have any problem with that. I would like for one of those people that are out there at the site to be one of the ladies
I understand.
at the scale house. Now, I don't have enough ladies at the scale house to make that happen. I do need some part-time help at the scale house. I put that plug in now. We need to do that soon. Okay. If you did that and I had a lady to send out, but now keep in mind, out of how many working days in the month? I've got 10 centers. So what you're asking for is doable, but it's going to require quite a bit more manpower than you're thinking.
Well, how many ticked off consumers are you going to have when you think it's on the 15th when it was actually the 14th and you've loaded up this 500-pound TV in the back of your truck?
Then you drive on to the landfill.
But if it's a Saturday, the landfill's not open, so
Then you'll wait a Monday.
So,
Well, let's address that issue. There's only one place we can take these.
Yes.
Okay, and you know what I'm getting ready to say. We need to open the landfill on Saturday for the people who work, who can't take their trash, who can't take their TVs, their other electronic devices. There's no, where do those people, where would I take mine? I leave at 7, I get home at 6:30.
Yeah.
Everything's closed.
I understand that, and I can tell you this board, not these people, this board is the one that said 1 Saturday a month. We were working 4 Saturdays a month, okay? I can tell you this, when I had 3 ladies in the office, they only got 1 Saturday a month off rather than having to work on Saturday. What I'm telling you is more manpower. I don't have any problem with this, but you can't do it with the people that I have.
Well, I think we can do it with the people you have and adjust the days. We drop a Wednesday and we work on Saturday. That's 5 days. And if it's time for this board to reconsider what other boards have done, I'm prepared to do that. Because we don't have to live with what's happened in the past forever. Because, you know, landfill needs to be open on Saturday. It's just plain and simple.
Well, that issue would be a standalone issue that we need to address separate. I think Mr. Huff's concern is right now, disposal of the TVs. So, and I agree with Commissioner Rice as far as the landfill. If we're going to do something like this, then we're going to have to make it a little more convenient for the people to use these things and utilize this to dispose of these TVs. If we don't, then our creeks and our hollows are going to be full of TVs. And
I do hear that, Commissioner, and I don't want to take away from that thought, but we really don't have that much of a problem with that kind of thing.
well, we don't yet because we don't charge.
I agree with that, but I hear that about trash. I hear that about trash for Saturday because we're closed on Saturday. We'll get trash down the banks, and I'm really not seeing that.
Mhm.
You know, many years ago, yes, but I'm not seeing that now. What I'm saying is that there's a little bit of truth in the fact that somebody's going to throw it, but not very many. Okay, you're not going to have a mass exodus to the nearest bank to throw your television down. Okay, that's what I'm trying to tell you. And
I
don't
hope
think
that
you
is
ought to make a
correct.
decision based upon that. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Gotcha. This is difficult, and I know that you reduced the card, but you have to swing. You have to just kind of sway with the punches when it comes from dinner. There's not a whole lot you can do.
Right. I understand what you're saying. That's why this is a tough situation, because we want to help the citizens of the county and we do everything we can. And then this hits us in the face. And now here we're going to have to decide on what we're going to charge for a TV. It's going to make everybody say, hey, I'm not going to buy a new TV because I don't want to pay the fee to get rid of the one I've got. So, that's a, now you're going to have.
Well, the roundabout way of looking at that, we don't have any retailers in the county that sell TVs, so
Well, that's
that's gonna be Buncombe
There's
County
nobody-
problem, I guess.
There's nobody.
I was very surprised that we have continued to receive as many of the large TVs and the CRT type TVs that we have. I tell you, entertainment, I believe, is recession proof. You would think that there wouldn't be that many out there, but the TVs we're receiving are coming from Madison County. I would say 99% of them are coming from, now I'm sure there's a percent coming. 99% of them are coming from the county. And there are just a lot of them as people work through throwing those away and going to a flat screen. And I'm surprised about that, very surprised about that. So are folks gonna spend their money on entertainment when times are bad? Yeah, they are. And television is one of the ones apparently. Okay, that's pretty much my.
Yeah, as technology advances, then your sales are going to also reflect that. Therefore, you'll have somebody throw away a perfectly good 60-inch TV because they got a 90-inch and they don't want it. So they just,
Well, I can tell you something else too, and this is just my 2 cents. The flat screens aren't lasting as long as those old CRTs.
No, they don't.
well, that's so they can sell you a new one. That's why they do that.
Hey, I don't know why, I just know that's what it is.
Mr. Oak, again, I just, for my own clarification and maybe for the people who are here, I just want to make sure that I'm understanding correctly. The cost per load to dispose of these is estimated to be nearly $44,000. How many loads per year do we anticipate?
No,
that's a year.
The total.
Okay, it says per load at the top, so that's where okay, I got you.
Yeah.
That's it.
Total per load, and then you have to look at that bottom row
Okay.
that says totals of the whole thing.
All right.
Okay, the total per load is actually each individual line item as you go down through there.
I see, okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Jim, as we know, this is a complicated issue. We discussed it before. We don't yet know what the legislation is finally going to be.
Agreed.
And I do think it is not just the disposal of the TVs. I really do think we need to take a look at a couple of other issues about public service for the county, your staffing needs. It's complex that we need to look at. And I would recommend not an indefinite delay on this decision, but I would recommend that we address this at our next meeting after we've all had time to think about this and have time, opportunity to further discuss it, but also not procrastinate, because I know that's a real concern of yours. The longer we procrastinate, it only gets worse.
Yeah,
And to commit as a group that we will study this, we'll work on it, and we will come to a decision at our next regularly scheduled meeting. But I, for one, still need to get my head around parts of this and your personnel needs, which is very clear. Whatever we do here is still, that's going to impact that.
Yeah.
Whatever decision we were to make tonight, that's still, you have personnel concerns. If we expand or change the hours, which is obviously under discussion here, that needs to be part, because that's going to affect your staff. And all of it affects the budget. It's easy to look here and say, okay, we're just going to charge $15 for the TVs and that somehow magically solves it. It's a more complex problem than that. And I would feel better to give us another month to look at this, study it, and look at that whole picture, not just the TV, so that we're not revisiting this every 90 days. And
I don't have any problem with that. You're gambling with that. You're probably looking at somewhere between $5,000 and $7,000. Because if we get another load of TVs and we have to get out, I guarantee you the next load of TVs will cost us. Okay, so that's what you're putting at risk, is somewhere between $5,000 and $7,000, because that's what it'll cost us per load. As you can see, as you look down that number right there, I don't have any problem with that. If that's your decision, I don't have any problem with it. And by the way, this is a complex issue, but the whole department is a whole lot more complex than people have any clue what it is.
Yes.
Mr. Huff, if we agree and we vote on one of these scenarios, how soon could you put this scenario in effect? How long would it take for you to get?
I would recommend that we advertise it a little bit, maybe a week, 2 weeks. We advertise it so people are not blindsided by it. Now, there's still going to be a lot of people that don't see, what we say, and are not going to like it when we say, hey, that's going to cost you to throw it away. There's no doubt about that. But if we spend a couple of weeks and we place an ad today, a couple of ads in the paper and on our website would be at least 2 weeks notice before we put it in place.
We didn't give any notice to the taxpayers that we were going to stop taking the TVs.
We didn't stop taking the TVs.
You don't take them now?
Yeah, we take
You
them.
do.
At the landfill.
But
We didn't tell, no, we
at the
didn't.
10 sites?
No, we did not, because we didn't have any choice. We didn't have any place to put them.
Right.
And I can take you down there and show you 3 or 4 trailers of electronics sitting outside. And that's just not a good situation. Should never do that. First off, Diener would have a field day if they came down and saw them down there. But we don't have any place to put them. We just physically do not have any more place to put them. We have to stop.
Yeah, unless you're able to get this next 2 loads.
If we can get these 2 loads out of here, that'll give us at least 1 load that we could take a full load. Yes. But we got put in that position simply because everybody's up in the air. I mean, they started talking about this bill back in June and nothing has happened. And by the way, if the bill does pass, if that passes and they reduce the subsidies to 0, it won't be 30 cents a pound, it'll be 40 cents a pound.
Mm-hmm. And see, that's another part of my concern about that. We do it now, and then are we going to revisit this in 45 days or 90 days? because we've not addressed the whole complex issue. Now, I don't want to stand in the way of solving the problem.
Yeah.
We've got to address the problem. But just making a $20 charge tonight, a $15 charge tonight is not the conclusive answer to the whole problem. It's a step. But if we do that and then don't do anything else in 90 days, don't do anything else in the next 6 months, and it's just my personal, that's all I can speak. I would prefer for us to take a hard, comprehensive look at this rather than just that $20 snapshot or $15 snapshot.
I think with two things. Commissioner Briggs isn't here, and I would not want to do anything with this unless all commissioners were present. And we have a new commissioner on the board tonight, and I would want him to review this, look at this, and study it just as well as everybody else, so we all are on the same page and understanding of what is taking place. I still have some questions that I'm sure I'll be calling Forrest or Mr. Huff about concerning this. And I will again agree with Commissioner Gentry. Commissioner Gentry, are you making a motion to table this until our next meeting?
Yes, sir. I won't make such a motion.
Okay, I have a motion on the floor to table this, which is the situation concerning our electronics and TVs until our next meeting. Do I have a second?
I will second that, but before I second it, I just want to remind this board that we appear to be ignoring our working class of people by only giving them 1/2 a day a month to take their electronics to the landfill. You get in your truck and you drive from the head of Spring Creek to the landfill. It needs to be open. You get in your truck and drive from the head of Spillcorn or from the head of Ebbs Chapel. Let's make sure that we remember the working class of people. I work, and I keep using myself as an example, but I'm not lying when I talk about myself. I'm telling you the truth. When I leave home at 7 o'clock and I get home at 6 o'clock, everything is shut down. I mean, I have to arrange to go to the landfill once a month, basically. And we have a lot more trash than that at my house. But the point is, I will just remind the board to let's be mindful of that before we move forward, because I do remember a day when we had the landfill open more Saturdays and we didn't go broke as a county doing that.
I understand that, Commissioner. That, as I said before, I will point out to you that it was another administration that asked us to do that. The other thing is, you still have until 6 o'clock to take your trash places, okay? We have 10 centers that are open till 6. Some of them 6 days a week, and others 4 and 5 days a week, okay? So you have plenty of opportunity to take trash. What you have to bring to the landfill is construction and demolition debris, which we decided, the other administration decided that 4 hours each month gave the working man, as you say. And I understand what you're saying, but you're kind of implying that we're ignoring the working man. And we are not ignoring working men. We are working men also. Okay, so we still gave people opportunity 4 hours on a Saturday, one time a month, and that was a decision that was made. It'd be the same thing for the electronics. Construction demolition, 4 hours on a Saturday. And the electronics, 4 hours on a Saturday. If you want to go beyond that, we're going to have to talk about how to get it accomplished.
Well, and that 4 hours, the transfer center is not open.
No, we do not have the transfer station open. And there's a good reason behind that. And the reason is we must clean the transfer station floor by permit. And that means we have to have a transfer operator there every time it's open. That means every Saturday. And that's the reason it isn't. We cannot leave that floor unclean. And we cannot take dead animals on that day either.
Well, I just have a concern because, granted, the greater population base is in Marshall and Mars Hill, but there's a lot of people also out in the outlying areas of Madison County. I got a lot of family in the Laurel area, and other parts of the county, the more extended parts of the county. And I just want to make sure that as a board, that we look at this and take all that into consideration, because I think all five of us understand what the makeup of the county is. And I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but I've said enough about this.
What we will do, Commissioner Rice, what we will do, I have a motion on the floor and I have a second for the tabling of this until our next meeting. In our next meeting on the agenda, we will also put landfill hours of operation on there, and that will be discussed. And by that time, we can hopefully vote on some improvements on that, and we'll be getting with you to ask your opinion.
My door is open from 8 to 4:30 every day.
Okay.
Well, not Saturday.
I wouldn't change it.
Okay, what I'm telling you is come down and learn about the landfill. It's not hard to learn it. All you've got to do is come down and spend some time with me. And then you'll learn see what I'm talking about. Spend a little bit of time in the office and see what the ladies have to do and how much time they spend at each one of the items that they get to work on. Okay, it's not hard to do, guys. You got to just come down and spend some time with me. And you'll understand the situation, and we can further talk about the hours of operation.
Okay. I have a motion on the floor. I have a second. All in favor of tabling of this situation with our electronics and landfill, raise your right hand. All opposed likewise.
Thank you, Jim. Mr. Chairman, if I may ask for about 30 seconds, I will go find the custodian and see if we can raise the temperature in here about 5 degrees. I'm beginning to see people freaking in the seats. So give me about 30 seconds. I'm gonna go find the custodian.
Personally enjoyed it.
I think it feels good to see it.
Yeah. But for all my COVID.
Yeah.
Cover 2 people.
That's right. I think you get one.
And ours must have been cold too for him.
Still cold.
Yeah.
Go back to Marshall.
While we're waiting on him to come back, I want to thank everyone for coming tonight. It's good to see the number of people that are coming to our meetings now and enjoying the nice facilities.
We got a
we
good
have.
seat, Wayne.
I know. Yeah, it's good to see you. You can hear us.
You can hear it. Proud of you folks.
Well, I appreciate it. We are glad to see everyone here.
I had a window where you can see out of here.
Well, we don't want a window because then you'd want to leave when it got dark.
If they took the clock off the wall, it'd be more like Vegas, where they don't have no windows, no clocks.
Pump
You just
oxygen
stay all
in.
night long.
Yeah, we'll pump a little oxygen in, give you free coffee, you'd stay with it.
Where is the coffee fund?
Yeah.
You'll be along long. You're very welcome.
Okay, did you tell them to get it above freezing?
Well, yeah. You'll be long in a minute.
Water's frozen.
Go ahead.
You're all right. Commissioners, if you will look in your packets, I have some updates on surplus properties that we had previously discussed at the work session about 3 weeks ago. One of the properties we discussed was about 80 acres that we are under the impression we owned on Upper Shut-In. It's been on our website since last October, November, and I assumed that whoever put it there had done the research and figured out everything, but come to find out, we have not done a title search on that, so I'm going to have that removed and checked out, and there are some questions about it from the surveyor.
Thank you, Zach.
We'll get that figured out. So that's an update on that. As soon as I find out some clear information, I will get back with you on that. The second item is a lot that we own at Codgerson Creekside Preserve at Little Pine. This is property that we also discussed at that meeting that we listed with a realtor last fall. We had listed it for $150,000. His contract came up around sometime in June. He called me about renewing. Before renewing, that was a previous board, previous manager, talked to the attorney, and he suggested talking with you all about it. We did talk about it at the work session. What we didn't know at that time was how much was owed on it. That is attorney's fees, penalties, and back taxes for $8,660. One thought is to relist that with the realtor for $50,000, see what we can get. The other is to consider some sort of annual sale where we collect all of our properties, which we will have a number of as we pursue back taxes. The point being to get only what we put into them. They do that in Yancey County, I think every August, and it's worked well for them. It's something we'll have to face as we go forward with different, when we have to foreclose due to taxes. We can end up with a number of lots that our sole goal should be to get them back on the rolls and get those back taxes paid and current, and not for us to amass a tremendous amount of property. So right now, we don't have a big problem because we only have that lot, and the next lot falls in a similar category. We could, if you all wish, relist that with a realtor, see what we can get for it, or we can wait until we've accumulated more and just advertise that we've got some lots and people show up at the courthouse and bid on them.
How long does the realtor usually want you to sign a contract for us?
I believe 6 months.
6 months. And as far as having this auction, as we were talking about, we discussed that before, it would take us some time to get ready for that. I would like to see you go ahead and reduce it because it does seem like a large amount. And if we can get anything above and beyond what we have spent and get it back on the tax books, that would be our benefit.
Mm-hmm.
So I would like to see it put it back on it. If you think $50,000 is a fair price and the realtor thought that was a fair market price, then I don't know if the board, I'll hear what the board says as far as that, but I would say put it back on and let's see what we can do with it to move it. It may sell in a day or two. You never know.
Okay. If the realtor feels like that would be a fair, and that it potentially would move it.
Now, I know we haven't had an abundance of these properties, so we don't have our own historical data to go by, but the surrounding counties that may have been doing this a little longer than us, do they get a better return on their investment out of the auction, or is it just a convenience factor?
I think it's generally convenient. Mr. Laws may speak to this, but it's generally the convenience when you have a number of properties. The question could be asked, why should we make a huge profit off of something we didn't actually purchase? Right. So I think that's sort of the thought there. I think when you get a number of properties, you probably gain from both convenience and money that you would get just by getting it back on the tax rolls. But if you've got something sitting there and you can list it and maybe get more out of it, that seems like a good, there's nothing you're losing while you wait to see if you have enough. You don't want to you can't very well have a large sale with two properties.
Forrest, if we have an auction, the property goes, the highest bidder will get it, but is there not a 10-day upset bid period? Okay, and then that could prolong this piece of property going, it could continue on for a long time.
Mr. Chairman, the auction process is usually good when you say have more than 10 properties, because that way you can run one notice in the newspaper. You can also disseminate all of that information out to all of your realtors. Say, there's going to be an auction. All the materials are gathered because that's necessary in order to do the notice. When we do it each year, we have the local newspaper also run a front page notice for us, which they do. And that, when you do it by public auction, it's not an absolute auction. The
Right.
county reserves the right at its next meeting to look at each of the bids and determine whether you're going to sell it or not sell it. We take any offers because we want to see what the market's going to bring for the piece of property. And then, of course, each of the bidders will know that they may be approved and they may not. We require a deposit down, so we have a deposit. In the past, the board has not turned down really any offer because we figure through that advertisement, it's going to bring what it would on an open market.
But at this time, we don't have, basically, we really don't have.
You don't have a
Enough.
sufficient,
Yeah.
you don't have an inventory at this time.
Right.
And it's much like what Forrest has as your next lot there, the little floral lot.
Mhm.
You know, you want to get rid of that one pretty quick because that's not only not making money, but it's costing.
And there again, for the same thing with that. I would like to see that put into a real, well, advertise it with or without a realtor. I prefer not, but if we've already have it listed, that's fine, but we're gonna have to pay realtor fees on top of, out of whatever we get, so.
They're essentially the same situation, except the second one, of course, we're paying maintenance fees.
Mhm.
That one, to my knowledge, has not been listed. If it has, the contract would have expired by now. I didn't have a record of the first one, except the realtor called me and said that his contract, and he had a copy of it.
I'm curious, is Wolf Laurel Country Club current on their taxes to the county?
The country club is, there are surrounding properties there that vary. I'd have to check for sure. It's actually all on those. The next item is boat ramps at Barnard Park.
Before we go, do we need to make a motion to list these with the realtor?
Let's do, in order to do this in the right manner, go ahead and do I hear a motion to?
So moved.
Okay, I have a motion to list the property as we stated to our county manager to dispose of the property as needed as far as listing for sale.
Second.
I have a second. All in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, nothing. Okay.
The next item is boat ramps at Barnard Park. Last year, a grant was received from the Hidden River Fund for $50,000 to construct concrete boat ramps at Barnard Park. That was to be added to $15,000 in FEMA funds and later a $15,000 TDA match. AMEC Environment and Infrastructure was hired by the county to develop that design and specifications for the project to be bid. That was completed in late last year. We received an extension on the project. We also had a couple of other projects, if you recall, that we discussed and chose not to move forward with. The total project amount was initially $100,000. There was $50,000 in local match in kind and TDA as part of that. I don't know where that $50,000 was going to come from because it wasn't budgeted last year, which is when it should have been in the budget. However, there is enough to do what we need to do from the looks of it. We have the plans. My proposal is to move forward with AMEC's proposal that they submitted last summer to have them go ahead and create the bid package. It's a little unclear about whether they would do the whole thing or just assist us. I want to confirm with them that they will handle the whole process of putting the bid package together, holding a pre-bid meeting, and getting interested contractors to the table. that would save significant time for me. The money would be paid out of the grant funds to AMEC. And then once those bids came in, they would actually oversee the construction process. My suspicion is that once the bid comes in, we'll probably look at reducing the number of ramps for the project. But as long as we get 2 out of that project, we're really getting there. We'll talk with Pigeon River Fund, of course, to make sure that that's satisfactory to them. But I think it will be difficult to build 5 for the amount of money that is left. But if we can, that's great. We'll try our best. But I would need, of course, glad to answer any questions, but at that point, if you're comfortable with like approval to move forward with AMEC on that.
Forrest, I'm going to ask this question because I don't recall, and I'll ask our clerk. Do you recall if we voted for AMEC Environmental and Infrastructure to do this, or were they just contacted and?
I think they were just contacted by Mr. Lamberson and we started receiving invoices.
So we have never officially hired them. So how will that work for us as far as this situation right here? Are we binding to them, or do we have an option to go elsewhere, or would you recommend that we go elsewhere? Or
at this point, I would not recommend going elsewhere. I think they've drawn the plans. They're familiar with it up until now. I don't know what was done a year ago. I can't remember. I remember hearing a lot about them. I know there was another discussion about having a master services agreement with them. That's separate from this. That would have been so that whenever engineering services were needed, the county would just use AMEC and not have to bid each time. That was really a separate discussion. And that's what I'm more familiar with. But I know that they have been involved. They've drawn these plans. They're ready to go. We need to get moving on it. They're reputable for what they're doing, and that would be my recommendation. I'm open, of course, to looking at other areas, but we'll lose time.
no, if time, I understand this project has drug out for quite some time. And yes, I understand the importance of getting it done, and we need to get it done before bad weather sets in, and we can't get it done, then we're delayed another 6-8 months, and then the subject to price changes and the quotes and things to change. I was just concerned that making sure we did not have an agreement with them that was binding, that not only this project, but other projects we would have to deal with them when we could have an option.
That separate issue,
Okay.
and that's as far as that's dead. As far
Okay.
as
That's what I, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to authorize the county manager to proceed in this matter.
Okay, I have a motion to proceed with Mr. Gillum's agreement with AMEC for the company to oversee the bidding and construction for Barnard Park boat ramps. Do I hear a second? Second. I have a second. All in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, likewise. Okay.
Next item is relatively brief legislative update. Things have slowed down in Raleigh until they pick up, and then they'll pick up and be finished probably pretty quickly. But the latest news last week that would impact the county for this year's budget, there's discussion about moving the May primary. There's already going to be a presidential primary on March 15th. That would be an additional election, which would require us to open, the board of elections would have to open all of their precincts on election day, plus have early voting. About according to their budget, $77,775 to do that. During our budget discussion, we knew there were so many unknowns about what might happen with these various elections that we held off, but we've got the money there if we need to appropriate it. There is now discussion about moving the May primary, all those races, to March. If that happens, regardless of any other opinions that y'all may have about it, budget-wise, that would cut out that $77,775. So it could really be a benefit to us. The House pulled that bill last week after debate on that. I have no idea if they'll go through with that, but it's potential to save us significant funds to the Board of Elections if they do move forward with that. I imagine they'll make that decision pretty quickly because the whole process would have to be moved up as a result. The budget appears to be getting closer. They've made a lot of progress on some of the larger items, it sounds like. We're still kind of waiting to see what they do. I think the main budget conferees worked over the weekend, the last 2 weekends, I believe. As soon as they reached agreement, it'll take 2 or 3 days to pass a budget. It may take a while to get there still, who knows, but that's where they're moving. Regarding the regulatory reform bill that relates to our electronics recycling, and it didn't impact the discussion that much because of where y'all were headed, but I'm told, talked with the Commissioners Association Legislative Affairs Director today, and his understanding from what they've been told by conferees on that bill is that that provision will be taken out and turned into a study. If that does, that means we're dealing with 30 cents a pound instead of 40, so we're still not out of the woods. That's what they're hearing now. All it takes is new circumstances and somebody changing their mind. So who knows, until something's passed, it could go through, it could not. But right now their understanding it isn't, but the fair thing to say is it's 50-50. So hopefully we'll know more. That's one of those issues that is probably waiting for after the budget. Once the budget's passed, they'll then start to move bills like that, sort of the last little cleanup items for the year. Sales tax legislation also being debated kind of at the same time as the budget. You should have received, and if you didn't, I'll pass these to each of you, a proposal from Carolina Association of County Commissioners, just for you to take with you regarding the sales tax. The NCACC has been saying that they've been searching for a solution that helps all 100 counties. That's difficult when you're talking about money and it's being divided among 100 counties, but I understand they're in a very difficult spot to try and wouldn't expect them to pick sides between the counties. But they have some proposals there you can look over, all of which could be good for Madison County, none of which would be as good as the redistribution, but granting additional tax flexibility for expansion, that would actually, that's language for actually allowing the local tax increase, so that's a little different. But the others, using funds that are already there, increasing the education lottery funding for school construction funding to counties, adding flexibility for required school capital set aside to allow those funds to be used for any educational purpose, better utilize school fund balances. Ours is actually not one of the ones that has risen. There have been some in many counties throughout the state that school boards have been hoarding money, it appears, and there's an argument that they need, from counties and the legislature, they need to spend some of that. Ours has not been one of those. They've actually been spending it for the last several years. Use state sales tax growth for struggling counties. Of course, the definition of that is important. What is struggling? Limit county property tax exemptions. That is talking about, there are always proposals in the legislature to exempt certain people or types of property from property taxes. Very well motivated. It impacts the county's budget. I don't know how they want to limit that, but it's in the document for y'all to look at. But this is something for you all. And then, of course, the grand solution always is a study commission. So, you know, they'll come back next year and we'll still have 80 counties that win, 20 counties with all the people who would lose. So it's, I'm gonna tell on those. Actually, all I have on legislative updates. Do y'all have any questions? Glad to answer.
Any questions for us?
Okay. And we have, actually, if we could hold personnel for closed session.
Yes.
And item E was courthouse update. Spoke with Marvin Mercer, engineer, today. we had talked at the work session, his proposal for $1,500 to look at the basement of the courthouse and put his stamp on a plan to fix that part, which would then allow us to put that together with a general scope of work for the 3 offices that were gutted back in the fall, to put those back in working order. The building inspectors advised us that we would need an engineer's stamp on that fix. Pretty simple thing. It's going to be $1,500 to do that. As soon as that is done, which he says he can get out here on Monday or Tuesday, I propose if you all can look at your calendars in the next day or so, I'll send you an email about 20th or so of this month, later this month. Let's have a special session, go through that, and go ahead and approve that bidding process so we can get that work started. We have $70,000 left in the courthouse fund at this point. So that should be enough to cover that work. I'm not sure if it will cover the any splits and dealing with the air conditioning and the rest of the building. It may. That's one of the reasons we wanted to sort of step back and create a plan for the money that's there. But by the time we meet, we'll have firmer answers on each of those things. Regarding, I know Commissioner Rice is interested in looking at the overall needs beyond just this initial work. And by that point, probably this week, I'll be having discussions about what that would cost us and what rates are, what our options are with our current loan for the jail and cooperative extension. If there's a possibility of rolling that cost into that loan, extending the term and costing us little to nothing extra. Won't know till I ask, but that's the plan.
And of course, if I may, I spoke with Mark Cody today, and they are reaching the point of being desperate for space needs. So we really need to get after. I think we all know that.
Yeah, I was up there Friday and looking at, they're using those rooms a little bit, bags of stuff, but the number of records they keep is sort of phenomenal, just where that's going to go. Once we fix this, we're going to have to probably within 3 to 5 years figure out, and it can be off-site, but we're going to have backup storage for them. Just, filings are up, that sort of thing. But as soon as that's ready, we'll get that handled. Any other questions?
I'm gonna go ahead and make the motion that we move your section D personnel into closed session. Do I hear a second? I have a second. All in favor of moving the section D personnel into closed session, raise your right hand. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's cold, my nose is running now.
I think it's warmed up a few degrees.
Forrest, on what you were discussing there on the 20th, if you'll just contact each one of us like you've done in the past and give us a couple of dates to pick from, and we'll go from there, because I would like to see this started on ASAP, and that's, we don't want to delay it any longer.
Is this on yours?
Turn it on.
You got to talk
Yeah.
about it.
Say
We'll right
test.
into it.
It won't bite you.
Sure.
I promise.
Turn it on.
Well, I'm
I've never
not sure
seen
which
anybody
way.
get
A
that
little
long.
button.
in it.
If it's
I'll
pushes
push
up.
it up.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. You have in your packet the financial report for the month of August. Anyone have any questions? This is, next month is when you'll start seeing the taxes, the effect that the tax collections out on our budget.
Okay. Darlene, that will also affect this landfill, the gains and losses because of the disposal.
Because of the disposal fee, yes,
Okay.
it will, because that money gets credited to the landfill fund.
Any questions for Darlene on the financial report.
You
Okay.
also have a list of the August invoices that were paid for the month of August. And if you have any questions, prepared, I have a 9-page report.
A 90-page report.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I have one question.
Okay.
There was an invoice of $12,000 to the CPA firm Gould Killian. Was that for,
That's for the work that they've done so far for this year's audit, the June 2015 audit.
so we pay them in pieces?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. And those invoices are approved by the local government commission before I'm allowed to pay them.
Okay, thank you.
The next item is budget amendment number 2, and it deals with 2 grants, one for the health department, it's called Project Lazarus, for $9,000, and then the library received two grants. That's the only items we have for budget amendment.
Are these new grants for the library?
Yes, it is new grants.
Well, where's Melanie? Thank you.
She just flew. She was an icicle when she went out.
Yeah. Okay. Any questions, discussion with Darlyne on the budget amendment? Do I hear a motion to approve budget amendment 2?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
So,
All in favor, raise your right hand on budget amendment 2. All opposed, likewise. Okay. All right.
The next item in the packet is the August property tax releases and refunds.
Bless.
Any questions for Darlyne on the August 2015 property releases? Well, it looks good. They seem to be decreasing.
Yeah, they're significantly
Pages
less.
shorter, yes, they are.
So that's a good thing. Okay. No questions. Do I hear a motion to approve the August property tax releases and refunds? Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay. I have a motion and a second. All in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, likewise. Okay.
The final item that I have is your 4 vacancies and reappointments. Yes, the first one we have is on the Social Services Board, and that's the unexpired term of Jim Baker.
Okay. At this time, I will open the floor for nominations for the Social Service Board.
I nominate Norris Gentry for that position.
I have a nomination of Commissioner Norris Gentry.
I'll second that.
Any more nominations? Okay, at this time, I will close the nominations for Social Service Board. Okay. I have a nomination on the Social Service Board for Norris Gentry. All in favor of this, raise your right hand.
I will recuse myself.
You will recuse yourself. All in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, likewise, okay. All right. Board of Health.
And that's the unexpired term of Jim Baker as well.
Okay. This time I will open the floor for nominations for the vacancy on the Board of Health.
I would like to nominate Commissioner Rice.
I have a nomination of Commissioner Clayton Rice.
I'll second.
At this time, I will close the nominations for the, are there any more nominations? I better ask that first. Any more? No. At this time, I will close the nominations for the Board of Health. I have a nomination for Clayton Rice. All in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, likewise. Okay.
The next one is Mountain Area Workforce Board.
Is there anybody talk to anybody for that?
That one, actually, they've changed the regulations on that. I think we actually have to receive a nomination from, so that'd be probably best to hold that one off.
Okay, we will skip that one.
We have 3 vacancies on the nursing adult health care home board. One is vacated by Mr. Baker. It's for a 1-year term, and then also Grace Haney for 1 year. Barbara Rice's term was up. I have spoken with Ms. Rice, and she's willing to serve another term. Ms. Haney is not able to serve another term.
Okay. Are there any, does any of the commissioners have the contact? I will take this first one. I don't know if any of the commissioners have contacted anybody that would be interested in filling any of these positions. I'm going to drop down here and open the nominations for nursing adult care home. Do I hear any nominations for the nursing adult care home?
I nominate Barbara Rice.
Okay, we have a Barbara Rice for the nomination for the adult care home.
I'll second that.
Any more nominations? None? At this time, I will close the nominations for the nursing adult care home positions. We have a nomination of Ms. Barbara Rice for her 2-year term on the nursing adult care home. All in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, likewise. Okay. This one down below there, Darlene, that says upcoming. What is the date on that one? Do you know?
That would be the next month.
Okay,
So, yeah.
so we are okay until our next meeting. Okay. Anything else?
Thank you. I apologize, I forgot to sneak into that microphone there, Dan.
It's okay. Public comment. We have no sign up for public comment at this time. Thank you. Okay. Number 13, closed session. Do I hear a motion to go into closed session for General Statute 143-318.11 for personnel and real estate discussion?
Could we add to that .3 for attorney-client privilege? I have a issue that I need to discuss Forrest and I.
Okay, 143-318.11, also real estate personnel, and .3 for client privilege. I have a motion.
Second.
I have a second. All in favor, closed session, raise your right hand. Okay, we are in closed session.
And we will be gathering in the same room we did last time, which is the first classroom down the hall on the right.
Y'all take it now. Make sure.
And that room is about as cold as this one was. At least the AC works, and so does the heat.